Hello and welcome everybody. I'm really glad that you're here for the Navigating Neurodivergence Masterclass. Now, I know how busy life is and how much you're already juggling as a parent. So the fact that you've made it and made the time just tells me how important it is for you to get things right for your child, and you're throwing everything at that, which is amazing. Now, some of you have been working with me throughout the week on the challenge, which is absolutely brilliant. We've been busy turning knowledge of neurodivergence into actionable strategy already. But I know that some of you won't have, and that is absolutely fine, because this masterclass is designed to stand alone. So it will give you clarity and practical takeaways all within its own right. Plus, if you want to, you can always go back and complete those 3 challenges from the recordings in the Facebook group if you want to. But my aim for tonight is really simple. I want to leave you feeling clearer and more confident and with a better understanding of what's really going on for your neurodivergent child and what can actually help them in everyday life. So wherever you're joining from, whether you've been with us all week, you're just joining us tonight, you're in the right place. So let's get started. First of all, why are we all here? Well, this training is for you. If you know that your child is struggling, but you're not always sure what's underneath their behaviours or how best to respond, and it may well be that you've probably read and listened to and seen lots of advice, even taken away all sorts of interesting insights, particularly from online, that make sense, but you've not had chance to implement those. So you want something that you can actually take away that's actionable and works. You want to support your neurodivergent child's confidence and emotional well-being without the constant battles and potential burnout. And this is also for you if you're now ready to move on from all the reading and all the scrolling and all the talking about neurodivergence and understanding and knowing what is actually going to help day to day. So that's what we're going to do. And I want to just give you a bit of information about me so that you know who you are listening to. I am Charlotte McDougall, and I'm founder of Nurture and Thrive. And I founded this because neurodivergence is at the heart of both my personal and my professional world. I've worked in education now for over 15 years, working in several roles from class teacher to head of English, Senko role, dyslexia specialist, senior assistant head with responsibility for inclusion. And during that time, I was acting deputy head teacher for a year as well. Now, along the way in my teaching career, I picked up my master's degree in leading learning, my qualification to diagnose dyslexia, and my qualification to be a certified ADHD coach. And as well, I have had my work in this field published, as you can see there. My own book, Reclaiming the Narrative and Thriving with SEN, and I've also written for the Times education supplement on neurodivergence issues. I also have lived experience of neurodivergent, having neurodivergent children and husband myself, and I'm currently still waiting for the outcome of my dual assessment. But I think, the reality of my neurodivergence hit a while ago when we got confirmation of both my boys having ADHD and autism. And sure enough, a lot of the traits that secured them their diagnosis very much seem to come from me. So I think it will complete the circle for me to get my own diagnosis as well very soon. Now, as well as all the qualifications and experience here, and being a teacher myself, one of the things that's really important to me is that I'm going to give you more than just information. I'm going to make it really clear and I'm going to make it really practical so that you can turn knowledge of neurodivergence into actionable strategy. And then final reason to listen to me is that I've got some rather great little prizes to give away, including a couple of copies of my book, 2 of my pre-recorded self-paced webinars covering different neurodivergent topics, and also 2 spots on my flagship 6-week parent support program, the Neurodivergent Compass, but I'll explain more about those prizes later on. Okay, so let's warm everybody up. I'm never quite sure whether to include this slide because I'm quite serious by nature, but everyone quite enjoys this. So I do tend to keep it in. Now, I'm not really about hacks, but this can be a nice little warm-up just to get everybody going. So this masterclass is really going to be about going deep in how to support the neurodivergent identity, to support confidence, resilience, understanding masking, the connection of those things to executive function and emotional regulation, and how all of that links to mental health. So we are going to be getting right to the root of neurodivergent struggle with a fairly broad brush approach today. But life as a neurodivergent parent can be tough. So I think it's important to keep things light where we can. So these are just 3 quick warm-up hacks. These are 3 of my favourites anyway. It would be great if you could share yours in the chat. But my 3 are these. First of all, just add water. Water should be part of every neurodivergent person's life. And this is all kind of links to nervous system regulation. It might be a splash of the face with cold water is really soothing for the nervous system. It might be a drink of cold water. It might be a nice soak in the bath. All of these things help to regulate the nervous system. So that's my first one, just add water. My second hack is to ditch don't. Instead, say what you want them to do instead, because the neurodivergent brain tends to hold on to the words that you have actually used. So if you say don't spill the tea, they will just be holding on to the words tea, spill. All of their focus will be going to those words. Whereas really what you want their attention to be going to is the positive action, which is carry it carefully. And that's what the words that they'll be holding on to. So if we ditch don't, they won't be focusing on the negative. They'll be focusing on the thing that you actually want them to do. And it tends to be far more successful. And then my third hack is to pause. Pause before responding. We need to do a lot of pausing in our lives as parents of neurodivergent children. Take a beat, regulate yourself before you respond. And there are 2 reasons for this. First of all, children and teens' nervous system is still developing. They are not able to regulate their own emotions in the same way that we can yet. So first of all, we need to be modelling this to them. And second of all, our nervous systems speak to each other. We kind of pick up on each other's energy. So if we are regulating ourselves, keeping calm, then their nervous system will respond to that by calming as well. So it's fewer words, lower voice, speaking more slowly, saying as little as possible. So those are my 3 hacks, just to get us warmed up. If you've got others that you'd like to share, please let me know in the chat. That would be great. We could perhaps share some of those at the end. Okay, now we're going to move into the deeper stuff now. Remember, these hacks are just sticking plasters. They aren't going to get to the root of affecting more substantial change. So let's move on to a recap of some of the lessons that we've been learning over the last 3 days, those of you who have been here on the challenge. So the key lessons we learned over the last 3 days are summarised here, and I'm going to go through that now for everyone, whether you were part of the challenge or not. But before I do, we're going to have our first prize time. We are going to celebrate 2 people who showed up each day of this challenge. And I'm giving away 2 copies of my book, Reclaiming the Narrative, which is rated 5 stars on Amazon. There's some really nice reviews on there to have a look at. Now, the first one is going to go to Sarah Pollard, who took part in all 3 of the challenges. And the second one is going to go to another person who committed really well to all three challenges, but also really supported people in the group throughout this week. And that is Karen from Preston. So thank you, Karen. You have been a real source of energy and enthusiasm in the group, as well as taking those tasks so seriously. So each of you, you will be getting a free copy of my book. That is all for you. So there'll be more prizes later on. But for now, back to what we learned in the challenge. If you weren't part of the challenge, these are the three things that you need to be aware of. So day one was all about labels and language. And what we explored here is that many neurodivergent children grow up feeling like there is something wrong with them. But when they understand how their brain works, and we shift the language around how their brain works, confidence can start to build from a much more secure place. And as I'll discuss later, confidence really goes to the heart of everything. We need confidence as that foundation. Then day two was validation for resilience. And we talked about how validation helps children process difficult feelings instead of shutting them down. And this is so relevant and important because emotional regulation for neurodivergent children is a huge issue. So we talked about how validation builds tolerance or resilience through self-awareness rather than sort of pushing through and toughening up all the time, which is a very old-fashioned way of seeing resilience, being tough, pushing through, being gritty. Validation is more about building resilience through self-awareness. And this helps us process and manage those big feelings before meltdown hits. So resilience and confidence grow together. Those two days work built on each other. And we talked about why this matters, particularly for neurodivergent children, because their experience of the world is often more intense, like more confusing, more overwhelming than for neurotypical people. And that's all to do with the way that they process and filter information. Neurodivergent brains take in a considerable amount more information than the neurotypical brain. And this is because of how the thalamus works. The filtering system in the neurodivergent brain isn't as effective. So the thalamus releases more raw stimulus, raw information through to the prefrontal cortex. Now, without getting too technical on this, basically it means that neurodivergent brains receive more information. They don't filter out the background information. I was at the Autism and ADHD conference in London last year, and one of the speakers put the percentage at 68%. I've not been able to verify that statistic, but she said that the neurodivergent brain takes in 68% more information from their environment than neurotypical brains do. And the reason for this is that thalamus part of the brain that's supposed to filter out anything that's irrelevant isn't as efficient. So that does mean you're going to be more overwhelmed because you've got so much more information to deal with. But it also means potentially once you understand that and you've got to grips with how your brain works and you know how to harness it better, you're actually able to spot a lot more. This is why neurodivergent people are much better at spotting patterns and solving problems, because they're able to draw on more of this information that they're pulling in. They notice everything. But it does mean that they are far more susceptible to overwhelm. So we had a discussion around that on day two. Now, day three was rethinking praise. We explored how the way we praise really matters, because generic praise can make confidence of a child dependent on external approval and lead to people pleasing down the line. Whereas specific observations can help children understand what it is that they're doing really well and build a stronger sense of internal self-worth in their capability. If they're constantly waiting for the next bit of well done and clap and tap and clap on the back, then they sort of begin to associate their self-worth with needing that. So we want them to feel more inner confidence. So it's about changing the way we praise. And if you want to explore that exercise, you can always go back and take a look at that video. So if you missed any of those challenges, you can go back and look at the recordings in the Facebook group. But the thread running throughout all 3 days has been about helping neurodivergent children understand their brain, validating their experience, and noticing that experience properly. And this really matters because, firstly, they then stop assuming that there is something wrong with them. Because when our approach to labels and language is more accurate and affirming, their view of themselves changes in that direction. Then they'll develop the emotional strength and self-awareness to handle the challenges of life, particularly the much more intensity with which they experience life. And this shows that resilience is more about self-awareness than constantly pushing through. This ability to cope with emotional challenges and developing emotional strength is understanding yourself. It's self-awareness rather than just blindly pushing through. And then finally, from these 3 days, we've learnt that children can build confidence from within and not be constantly seeking reassurance and external approval. So we're helping them by developing self-belief that doesn't rely on someone else. Now, these shifts create a better foundation for how neurodivergent children support themselves and find ways to learn that suit them. Now, that leads me on to tying all 3 days together for you. So my next slide does exactly that. It ties everything together, the root of everything. This is how it all fits together. And we're going to take this step by step. Confidence and resilience grow together. And this is why I said to all of my children's class teachers at the beginning of every school year that all I care about is confidence. I am saying this as someone who's quite ambitious, someone who's actually done very well at school and works in education. Excuse me. I say all I care about is my children feeling confident and the rest will take care of itself. So confidence really is about the child feeling secure in who they are. That means acknowledging the truth of who they are and their neurodivergence. So we're not talking about a fake bravado type confidence, but a fundamental feeling of, I make sense, okay? And the way my brain works makes sense to me now. And I am okay with that. And once you've got that fundamental, like unshakable foundation of confidence, resilience is being able to handle the challenges and the big emotions without leading to meltdown. Now, these two things grow together, confidence and resilience, because when a child feels secure in their identity, they must have developed a certain level of self-awareness in order to be able to be accepting of their identity and to have that confidence. That self-awareness allows them to start to recognize patterns in their triggers, in their strengths and their needs. And it's that self-awareness that allows them to notice big emotions as they arise, rather than being completely overwhelmed them. So when you understand yourself better, big feelings feel less frightening and less defining. And this took my eldest quite a long time, but now he's able to recognize, okay, I'm feeling really frustrated and I'm at level 6 and I'm going to walk away. And we hear that not infrequently from him. Or it might be that he says, I'm totally done. I'm burnt out. I feel heavy and I've got nothing to give. And I know that I have to go to my room and rest or play Lego. That limits overwhelm enormously. You are far less likely to hit overwhelm if you have that level of self-awareness where you recognize feelings starting to escalate. So you're giving yourself the grace and the understanding to do what you need to do rather than pushing through. So then their nervous system is more settled, and you're not constantly in this cycle of shame and confusion about who you are and why you're experiencing life in the way that you seem to be. And for me, nervous system regulation sits at the heart of emotional regulation and executive function. Children can only access these kind of strategies to support executive function, or the strategies to support emotional regulation that I teach in coaching sessions, when they have a handle on their nervous system. Whether it's calming themselves or organising themselves, their nervous system has to feel safe and settled enough to be able to do that secondary work. So all of this is foundation work that we've been talking about, and it's creating the conditions that make emotional regulation and executive function possible. And that's why most of my work focuses on emotional or sensory regulation and executive function, because these are the areas where neurodivergent children often need most support. But this foundation needs to be in place first. Now, because there's not time to cover everything in this challenge or this masterclass, I'm giving away some of my self-paced webinars and trainings on these topics. So I've got a free training prize available called Navigating Neurodivergence, the 3 Big Breakthroughs. Now, this is different to the 3 challenges we've done that have all kind of focused on building this strong, confident identity. It goes much deeper into emotional regulation and executive function, which are the sort of much more practical side of supporting neurodivergent children, and the sorts of thing that I cover in my coaching programs with them. So 2 of you here are going to get copies of those or access to those self-paced webinars together with the workbook that goes with them, so that you can personalize the learning to your circumstances. Now, one of these people, again, is going to be someone who took part in the challenge this week, and another is going to be a complete random from the Zoom call from people who are in here tonight. So the first person is going to be Sarah Pollard, and the second person, with the lovely help of my assistant James, is going to be Claire. Okay, Claire on the Zoom call. Okay, so you have both got access to my pre-recorded webinar, Navigating Neurodivergence, the 3 Big Breakthroughs, with the workbook. You can work through that and get lots more insight into executive function and emotional regulation. Okay, I think I'll leave the really big prizes to the end now. So we will move on to chatting about masking. Okay, I wanted to go a bit deeper on masking because there wasn't much chance to discuss this in the challenge. And masking is why that confidence and resilience is really important, because masking is a neurodivergent it's a neurodivergent child, perhaps subconsciously actually hiding from their true neurodivergent identity in order to fit in, because you are lacking that confidence and understanding in who you really are. And as I say, it is very often subconscious because it's instinctive from a very young age to adapt, to feel like you fit in and to feel accepted. And even on a more self-aware level, neurodivergent people sometimes mask because they recognise, to get through certain social situations in particular, requires them to show up in the world in a particular way that's seen as acceptable, even if it is not what feels natural to you. And going for interviews is a prime example of that. We need to show up in the world in a way that they want us to and they expect us to, which is why, we have all of these interview workshops and interview top tips just to make sure we know how to show up, shake the hand, make the eye contact in the way that's expected. So masking is an inevitable part of neurodivergent life, whether it's subconscious and learned as a very early adaptation or something that we knowingly continue doing just to make our path in life a bit easier. But to give you an understanding of what masking involves, think of it as having to operate undercover as a spy in a foreign country, let's say France. So you have to pass as a native every single day, constantly monitoring the words that you're using, your use of language, the accent that you're using, the behaviour and relationships, so that you don't stand out and you're accepted as a local native. Now, the language, the accent, the cultural differences, even the body language and mannerisms have to fit the expectation of that culture exactly if you are going to pass undercover as a local native. And that is exhausting, absolutely exhausting. And successful masking might make it look like you belong, that you are coping, that you're fine, but actually it is completely exhausting to be on that level of high alert, monitoring your behavior and the way you present yourself all the time. So just like speaking a second language all day for fear of being found out, masking drains your mental energy. And that's why children may hold it together at school all day and then crash emotionally at home, because home is their safe space. But the cost of masking can be huge to their sense of self and their sense of well-being. So you see that we're in a circle here. Children mask because they don't feel accepted for who they are. So they hide who they are. So they lose even more confidence in their identity. Whereas if we can short circuit that earlier, sooner rather than later, and develop a really confident mindset, they will feel less need to mask all the time because they fully understand themselves and they're more confident in who they are. Because if they feel like they've got to adapt to belong, they start to believe that their real neurodivergent self is unacceptable or a problem to deal with somehow. And then you're stuck in a cycle of shame and low self-worth. And there are terrifying statistics I was talking about on my page recently, particularly for the autistic community. I don't want to get heavy here. This will be the heaviest part. But the need to mask and hide who you are and feel a sense of shame in who you are has really devastating impacts on mental health of neurodivergent people. And for autistic people in particular, like me and my son, it's scary because there was a global study in 2024 that showed you are 3 times more likely to take your own life if you are autistic. So this work around confidence, identity, minimizing masking is really important because we have to look after these children and teens when they are at such a vulnerable stage in life. So by doing training like this, parents like you, carers, grandparents, by improving your understanding and awareness of this issue and empowering yourselves to reduce stigma really makes a difference, which is amazing. So I've gone off on a tangent there, but let's get back on track with some masking facts to be aware of. So first of all, masking fact number 1, at the heart of masking is a diminished sense of self-worth. They mask because they don't feel confident in who they are. They don't fully necessarily understand who they are and why they are. that is at the heart of why masking happens. And they put so much energy into monitoring others, being afraid of getting something wrong socially, and trying to fit in, that they are just trying to hide or reject who they really are, and the struggles that they're experiencing, which leads us on to masking fact number 2, which is that meltdowns are partly a consequence of masking. And we need to recognise that meltdowns at home, which is their safe space, are the result of overwhelm. And part of that overwhelm is the exhaustion and frustration of masking. And as I say, this is usually subconscious. They're not really necessarily aware that they're masking, because they start to build these adaptations to themselves very, very early on. And as I was saying in one of my posts recently, there's some misunderstanding between masking and meltdowns and tiredness. Masking leads to a kind of overwhelming exhaustion that causes those meltdowns. There are other reasons for the meltdowns as well, relating to overwhelm of processing information, but part of that is masking too. And then masking fact number 3 is that we do need to support unmasking at home. So when you recognise that masking is going on, that there's a disconnect between behaviour in some places compared to others, we do need to start supporting the ability to unmask at home. And initially, when a child is still struggling with the level of overwhelm, through processing, through masking, it can look like meltdown after meltdown. But eventually, the more that we allow them to unmask and be their true selves, by celebrating their neurodivergent traits, by normalizing stimming, which is just a form of self-regulation. You know, the typical hand flapping is just sort of excess energy. It's like you are regulating your nervous system by shaking in that way. So supporting stimming as normal and validating their feelings and their experience of the world all helps them to unmask. And I don't mind admitting that I found normalizing stimming really hard, and because it just felt uncomfortable. I don't want to say the word weird, but it felt uncomfortable and unfamiliar. And I also found some of the neurodivergent traits in my children quite triggering, because these were things that I saw in them that I knew had come from me, that were traits of my own that I had suppressed and well hidden, and I had been encouraged to dismantle from a long time ago. For example, my tendency to information dump. I was told when I was little, it's Charlotte's verbal diarrhea, because I would information dump. And this is just trying to get information out of my brain because it's overwhelming. So you talk 100 miles an hour, dumping information on people. This is particularly an autistic trait. We need to normalize these things. And as much as we might find some of these neurodivergent traits annoying or triggering, it's only because of the conditioning that we have grown up with ourselves. So we do need to get comfortable with supporting unmasking. Okay. Mind the gap. Okay. So we have already covered a lot this evening. I've been talking over half an hour. And I did say that this would be about 40 minutes. So we've covered a lot this evening in terms of how neurodivergent brains process more information, why overwhelm can build in the neurodivergent mind, and how that can shape their behaviour, their emotional responses day to day. And for many parents, just having that understanding of how their brain works and their experience can feel like a solid shift. And the level of awareness that it brings means that you don't take behaviours so personally. You don't necessarily find them so triggering because you understand where they're coming from. And with practice and a bit of time to work out what works for you, you are better equipped then to respond in a way that supports them. And that space between understanding and applying supportive strategies can be really hard, because we're busy parents, we're responding to events as they're happening, we're just keeping the wheels on some of the time. And that's what the challenge has been trying to achieve this week. It's just giving small practical ways of starting to implement that change, of taking knowledge of neurodivergence into actionable strategy. Because insight has to be able to settle before it can become noticeable, and practiced over time before it can actually be noticed. Reflection on what isn't working is required to be able to turn that information into action that actually works, sometimes by trial and error. But that trial and error requires some time and reflection. And the reality is that it really does take a village to raise a child, and particularly a neurodivergent child. So a neurodivergent community that gets it does give you somewhere to turn for advice and help you bridge that gap between knowledge and actual advice on what can really help and keep you accountable in trying out new things. So please keep implementing. Please keep trying to bridge that gap from knowledge to action. And it might help you to refer to some of these sources of information in bridging that gap from knowledge to actionable strategy, because all of these people that I'm showing you now have helped me on my journey in turning that knowledge into something that actually works for our family. So if you want my any recommendations, you can just email me, but these are great people. So we've got Dr. Naomi Fisher, who's kind of top middle there. She is a psychological clinical psychologist. That's it. My brain went blank for a moment. She's a clinical psychologist, and she talks particularly about children's experience of school. She's got a new book coming out soon as well, which is worth keeping an eye out for. We've got Pete Warmby, who is just to the left of Dr. Naomi Fisher. I have a real affinity with him because he is an ex-teacher, English teacher, no less. And he's autistic and ADHD, and he speaks all over the world now, trying to change perceptions around neurodivergence. And he has got an excellent way of explaining things if you want more help in knowing what language to use and how to explain things to other family members. He's really helped me with a lot of that. Professor Edmund Songwe-Bark, he's more of an academic. I have liked some of his work. He was one of the speakers at the ADHD and Autism conference. He's done a lot of work around the emotional burden of school and understanding what the school experience is like for neurodivergent children. Then we've got the autistic Senko on the far right-hand side there with curly brown hair. She is a practicing Senko, and she is online talking about all Senko-related things, particularly things relating to EHCPs, liaising with local authorities, kind of very much a practical Senko, sensible voice. We've got Dr. Becky Kennedy in the blue jumper at the bottom there. She is great for one to look at if you want to practice this idea of building resilience in your child through helping them process their emotions. So she's a great one for practicing validation to build resilience. Dr. Ned Holloway is at the bottom there. I can't believe I've not mentioned him. Dr. Ned Holloway is the one who came up with that brilliant analogy of the ADHD brain being a Ferrari and having bicycle brakes. He had a book out recently as well, so he is there. He's another great one to follow. He is ADHD and autistic, as are his children, and he's got some great videos on YouTube that you can have a look at. I don't have photographs of the last two. Steve Silberman wrote a groundbreaking book on autism. It's called Neurotribes, and it helps give a much broader historic picture of being autistic rather than the fairly narrow clinical diagnosis of autism as it developed around the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. He helps us see that it's actually a much broader, complex spectrum than the kind of stereotypes that have become more familiar over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And then Dr. Devlin Price, she's quite a sweary one. So if you don't like swearing, maybe give her a wide berth, but she really gets to the point in supporting unmasking. And she's a real trailblazer. So those are my top people to follow and read if you want to help keep the momentum in having people who are going to support you in taking knowledge into action. So my advice for now is if you want to keep bridging that gap, this is what I think you need to focus on next. I think you really need to get to grips with understanding and supporting the following topics. First of all, how the neurodivergent brain works differently. And obviously, there are so many overlapping traits, but if you specifically understand about the autistic brain, the ADHD brain, the dyslexic brain, then you can talk to your child much more knowledgeably in explaining why certain things are more difficult. Also, digging deeper into this neurodivergent identity issue, because that helps them understand their relationships better. So many neurodivergent children struggle with relationships because their perception of the world is different. So communication, there can be lots of misunderstandings that lead to friendship and relationships being really challenging because there's so much misunderstanding. So getting to the heart of that will really help with their sense of self. Again, digging deeper into resilience and how to support resilience in a compassionate way that supports emotional regulation in order to avoid burnout, because burnout it's an ongoing struggle in our house, and it is going to be the reality of most neurodivergent, certainly most autistic people. So there is work to be done in understanding how to cultivate real resilience in a way that helps you avoid burnout, particularly for children who have got to tolerate the education system and exams and that sort of thing. Number 4 is understanding emotional and sensory regulation, because this is where all the meltdowns come from. This is where all the behaviour that we don't recognize as something we have brought our children up to be, it comes from emotional and sensory regulation. It comes to this issue of the brain being overloaded and the interaction between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. If you understand that, you can help them build strategies to support it. Number 5 is routines that will help executive function. I said, just like emotional regulation before it, executive function is something that all neurodivergent brains struggle with, but for different reasons. So for the ADHD, it's more about dopamine regulation. For autistics, it's more about sensory regulation. For dyslexics, it's more about working memory and the interaction between auditory and visual information. So the reason behind executive function struggles is different for each neurotype, but they all struggle with executive function. So getting to grips with executive function and how to support it depending on what the struggle is really important. And then finally, mental health. because all of these things, the quality of their relationships, the quality of their understanding themselves, the way they burn themselves out, the ability to regulate, the ability to function, all contribute to your overall well-being and mental health, and some really alarming statistics that we need to get to grips with. So that is my advice. Go and read up on and implement on those 6 issues, and you will be on much firmer ground. And for those of you who are interested, that's exactly what I have created. I have created a 6-week parent program that goes through exactly those 6 topics, which is called the Neurodivergent Compass. It's a 6-week program for parents who want to take that understanding further and build it into everyday life for their family in a way that feels calm, clear, sustainable. And because of the way I have built the program, there is plenty of opportunity, because we work together on it live, plenty of opportunity for you to apply what you're learning to your personal circumstances. It's a way for you to continue working with me, if that is something that would be of interest to you, working through all of these issues, giving yourself the time and new ideas and understanding to embed something that can look like real change. So those are the 6 topics that we look at over 6 weeks: how the neurodivergent brain works in real life, supporting identity and confidence, supporting neurodivergent resilience to avoid burnout, understanding overwhelm and how that relates to sensory and emotional regulation, creating workable routines that will support your child's executive function, which is going to be crucial in getting through school, let alone real life, and pulling all of that together to support stronger emotional well-being and mental health. And each week builds on the last, so that you begin to make connections about how all of these topics work together and everything hangs together, topic by topic. And yes, I have decided that I'm going to give away 2 of these spots on this program completely free, and I'll be explaining a little bit about that later on. But for those of you who do want to know more about the program, I will just give you some information about what this 6-week program includes and how it covers all of those topics in bridging that gap from knowing something to actually implementing something. There is absolutely no pressure here. I've wanted to give this information so far, so feel free to go if this is not of interest. But if you do want to take things a step further with this support, then you can find out about it. You can just get some information on how it works here. So there are 6 teaching sessions included in this, covering each of those topics I've mentioned step by step, with plenty of time for question and answer and how to implement for your particular circumstances as well. And we do that in that each session has its own accompanying workbook to help you apply that knowledge into action, so that it reflects your circumstances. You will also be part of the NDC, so that's Neurodivergent Compass community, for a 6-week membership, which will mean that you have 24/7 access to me to ask any questions or advice between our sessions. You'll also get 3 bonuses as part of the program: 2 of my pre-recorded self-paced webinars, which also have supporting booklets. You'll get a copy of my book as well. So what is all of this program worth when you put it together? Well, if you take each part of the course of the program separately, the 6 hours of professional training at £65 an hour, the 6 separate workbooks at £5 each, the 6-week membership of the Neurodivergent Compass support group with 24/7 access to me at £45 for 6 weeks worth of membership, the 2 bonus webinars at £34, and a digital download of my book, which on Kindle goes for £5, all amounts to over £500 for the full 6-week program with all of the extra bonuses and everything else. But the deal for this new program, because it is new, and I'm looking for feedback and testimonials for this first round, I'm doing a launch price of this full 6-week program for £197. And that will include everything that I've mentioned in the program and the opportunity to connect with other parents in the same boat as part of that NDC membership group. I've also got an early bird bonus for those of you who are really keen to sign up. Anyone who signs up by, well, I've put Friday the 20th there, but I've actually extended it to Saturday the 21st of February. If you sign up by Saturday the 21st of February, you will get access to a private NDC WhatsApp group with me. So you'll get my phone number so that you can get immediate feedback and access to me when you need to, as well as through the Facebook community. And you will also get free access to the NDC membership, which is starting in May 26. And the NDC membership will be, I've not yet priced it, but we are looking at, it will be £15 a month, we think. And that will include specialist guest speakers coming into the group regularly to speak to you, to help you keep applying that knowledge into strategy, help keeping you accountable, help develop that sense of community. There'll be lots of freebies, all sorts of things going on in the NDC membership. Now, this will start once the NDC parent program has finished. And for anyone who signs up before the 21st of Saturday, you will automatically get lifetime free membership of this new group. Now, there's lots more information that you can review at your leisure by scanning the QR code here. I'll also put a link to this information page up on the Facebook group. But if you are interested in working with me over those 6 weeks, taking each of those 6 topics step by step, applying them to your circumstances, plus all the bonus material that I've mentioned, then just take a look, because with this launch price, with this launch, it's a great opportunity to get in and work with me at those sorts of rates. Now, the doors will close to this program on Wednesday, the 4th of March, because the NDC program will get started on the Thursday. Now, I'm just anticipating questions here. Yes, the NDC live sessions will run on a Thursday at 6:30 p.m. starting on Thursday the 5th of March, but there will always be the video catch-up and 24/7 access to me to ask questions once you've watched that replay of the video, if for any reason you're not able to make it live. So that is how those will work. All of the information is in that QR code. So thank you for your time this evening. And now I do need to tell you about the grand prize, because 2 spots to the Neurodivergent Compass are going to be completely free, so that you can join us on this 6-week journey with all of the extras as well. And what I'm going to do is, for everyone who signs up, I'm going to announce 2 people who are going to actually get it for free on Wednesday, the 4th of March. So that is how we are going to work those final top prizes. I will be giving you their names. You can check out those people who have got it on Wednesday, the 4th of March. Now, if you've any questions at all about this 6-week program that you can do with me step by step, you can ask now in the chat, or we can chat some more in the Facebook group. You can put any questions in there, or I can even email you or give you a call. I'm quite happy to chat through any of those details. But for now, that is me done. I really hope that you found this masterclass useful in pulling together all of those strands of a confident neurodivergent identity, explaining the issues around labeling and language and resilience, and the issues around masking, and how all of that can link and come together as the route to supporting better executive function and emotional regulation. I will be in the Facebook group for the next 2 weeks to chat, to answer any questions, and I will look forward to seeing you there. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Thank you for being here.